Welcome back to Ask a Creationist. I'm Todd Wood. I'm president of Core Academy of Science, and I am a young age creationist, and I'm here to answer your questions about science or creation or whatever. And if you have questions, feel free to send them in. We'd love to consider them for future Ask a Creationist videos. So our question this week, how much evolution can creationists accept? It's kind of an odd question. It sort of implies there's this massive monolithic thing that is evolution. I tend to think of things a little different than that, but I can at least relate to this kind of question. But I've got to turn it around and, of course, ask the question, what exactly do you mean by evolution? Evolution has a lot of different aspects to it, all of which sort of fall under the umbrella of evolutionary biology. So, for example, genetic variation, population genetics, natural selection, adaptation, species origins and relationships. This is probably Darwin's principal contribution. Homology, phylogenetics, and the so-called tree of life, the fossil record, and biogeography, sort of small-scale biogeographic relationships of different species. All of these things go under the umbrella term of evolution. Now, typically creationists would want to make some kind of rhetorical maneuver here and cut out things that they believe are not really evolution. I'm not real comfortable with that, mostly because I want to think of things in the way that the people who study them actually talk about them. So with evolutionary biologists, they talk about all of these things as evolution, so I'm going to think of it in that way. And it basically comes down to, if you go to my bookshelf and pull down one of these textbooks on evolution, how much of it should you think, well, that sounds good, and how much of it should you be somewhat skeptical of and perhaps even reject? Well, the answer is there really isn't a hard and fast rule on this. It requires thoughtful discernment when dealing with individual claims of evolutionary biology. So I'm not going to be one who just says evolution is just wrong and I reject it. That's really naive and unnecessary. But on the other hand, I'm not just going to go in and accept anything as it is given to me. So let's give some examples here of what I'm talking about. So for example, the finches, the Galapagos finches. 40 years of research done by Peter and Rosemary Grant have demonstrated all manner of really outrageously cool observations of these finches. We've seen natural selection in progress, we've seen new species arise, we've seen adaptation happen to populations, and we know these things are happening because they've tracked every bird born on one little island in the Galapagos. It's remarkable, and I don't really have any objections to talking about this sort of evolution. Here in the southern Appalachians, we have an abundance of salamander species. Here's a green salamander crawling up the side of my house. There are so many species, and they're all extremely closely related, most of them being plethodonid salamanders, the lungless salamanders. And presumably, they are all related to a common ancestor. It makes sense to look at the sort of small variations between the various species and think that these are all related, and I don't really have a problem with that. I don't see any biblical or theological objection here. It makes sense. It makes sense that the mountains give all sorts of cool microhabitats which allow for differentiation of species from one mountaintop or valley to another. So I can understand these salamanders would be all related. Now, it could go on even farther, right? We could talk about the fossil record of horses and horse evolution, and should we accept or reject it? And I think, again, this is a question largely for the science. I'm not sure that there really is much theology here. The Bible really doesn't talk about God making individual horses and zebras and donkeys at the end of creation week. So I think the question of the relationships of all the horses and their ancestors, as revealed in the fossil record, is something that we can talk about, and it's something that we can explore using science. Eventually, of course, you get to issues like limb homology. So here, this diagram is attempting to show you the correspondence between the forelimb of a human being on the left there, and then a dog, and then various livestock. The evolutionary conclusion being that these have the similarities that they do because they are all related to a common mammalian ancestor, some rat creature that was running around more than 65 million years ago. And here's where I'm going to say I'm not so sure that's right, because when I see creation completed at the end of creation week, I see multiple groups, including humans, including the creeping things that would probably include mice or something like that, rodents of some kind, including the wild creatures, which might include wolves, and the livestock, which include the hogs and the sheep and the horses. And so I'm not sure there was a common ancestor. I think there's probably another explanation for the similarity of these forelimbs. And I think that's worth exploring. I think it's worth studying and figuring out how these things are all related in the sense of design or in the sense of actual ancestry. And then, of course, the great tree of life. If you haven't seen the modern version of the tree of life, this is a more modern version of the tree of life. It's showing relationships between bacteria and fungus and plants and invertebrates and vertebrates and animals and people, all on this vast, giant tree. And here I'm going to definitely say that's probably not right. It may represent something important about the similarities between these creatures, but I don't think it says anything about common ancestry, billions of years ago when there were only bacteria-like cells. I think the Bible is clearly against that with its depiction of a mature, completed creation at the end of creation week. And anything where we have humans evolving from half man, half animal ancestors, again, I'm just probably going to say that doesn't fit with the Bible's depiction of God creating human beings from the dust of the ground and breathing into them the breath of life, and they become living souls. Now, that doesn't preclude the idea that there could be people who lived a very primitive lifestyle in the past, but they were fully human, and they were not part human, part animal. So ultimately, I think we have to consider and weigh the evidence, both biblical and observational. It's not a simple matter of just saying all evolution is wrong, or of saying we can just fit any evolution, as much evolution as we can cram into the Bible, let's do it, or, not even worry about the correspondence between them. I think it requires discernment and nuance and careful study of exactly what is being claimed by the evolutionary biologist and exactly what the Bible and theology requires of us and how those all fit together into an integrated model. Now, I may have lost some of you, because you might be thinking, I thought God specially designed each species, right? I thought he gave zebras their stripes because he wanted striped zebras, and I thought he gave horses the ability to run, and he made donkeys stubborn, and I don't understand what is this business of accepting evolution nonsense? We should be rejecting evolution. It's a great question. And that's a question I'm going to deal with next week, because we're out of time for this one. But thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. Feel free to subscribe. Click the bell to get notifications if you like. Visit our website here, coresci.org, to get links to all of our social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you are so inclined, during this time of COVID shutdown, we would very much appreciate your financial support. You can find links to donate online at our website. Thanks for watching.